And so here we are in the second of a series of three about how to redeploy and how to release yourself from busy work. We've already discussed the dangers of busy work, the pathological elements that underpin it, and how we can find ourselves trapped, panicked, procrastinating, second guessing, all sorts of things if we overindulge in busy work. I've already offered you some hacks to try and overcome getting too wrapped up in busy work. And this time, what I'd like to do is to take the initial diagnosis that we've done and to provide a means to consolidate and to orient ourselves so that we can get out of the fix we're in. So this is all about second curve thinking, and I'll explain about second curve thinking throughout the video. I prepared a PDF which I will share with you and which I will describe and share with you also here, because I'm going to rely reasonably heavily on this thing as I get into the second part of this presentation. So let's talk about stabilization. Once we've overcome the conflict and the quite confrontational nature of having to deal with busy work, having to look inside ourselves and work out that actually we're in a state of panic, we're in a state of reaction. Once we've come to terms with that, it's time to get a little bit stoic about things and to start to stabilize and orient ourselves and to protect what is useful. A brief word about stoicism. If I were to sum up stoicism in one phrase, I would suggest it is, although we can't control others or events, we can at least control how we respond to others or events. Stoicism is a philosophy dedicated to the notion of inner calm, acceptance of what you can not change, and having the strength to change what you can. Second curve thinking was first promoted by Charles Handy, Irish thinker, and he basically outlined the notion that instead of waiting till everything gets to crisis point, and instead of living a life of reaction, take stock of what you have, take stock of what you value and what you can use, and then use those elements to get into the second curve. The second curve, in his view, being the next big decision that you make. Many people find themselves locked in because they have a tendency to sink their costs. There is the idea of the sunk cost fallacy, where if you are stuck in a situation, because you've been doing it for so long, you are loath to retreat. And as a result, you tend to invest more and more time and effort into treading water, and it becomes a sunk cost fallacy. The fallacy being that you think you can extricate yourself from a situation by replicating the same actions that have already got you there. Second curve, by contrast, is the notion of taking the best of what fits, having a good look at what you can affect, and then using what you have in order to almost slingshot yourself into the next phase. So what we're aiming to do today as this second consolidation stage, as we get out of the busy work curse, is to build confidence, is to take a breath, turn our back on all the negative stuff, and to prime ourselves so that we can go into the next curve of our thinking, the second curve. It's about approaching things from a strategic viewpoint rather than a reactive viewpoint. What I'm aiming to do really is to encourage an emotional reset and to employ some stoic grounding into our processes. It's all about emotional regulation. I've already introduced Stoicism, but I'd like you to think about it as a practical tool. It's a way to frame your world and frame your narrative in such a way as you can reset your emotions and you can reset your expectations. Let's make it clear. We reject avoidance and we reject denialism, and we embrace control and we embrace emotional stability and autonomy. Before we can optimize anything, we have to stabilize our systems. So let's remember this one thing. We can't control the world, we can't control other people, but we can control how we respond. Think strategically, and let's try to choose our battles. So that's cool and groovy, is it not? We can be stoic, we can reset our expectations, we can control certain things. But what are those things? What fundamentals can we control, and what fundamentals can we take ownership of, and therefore increase our own autonomy? Well, you have your own circle of influence, which is all of the things inside that circle are things that you are in charge of. For example, you're in charge of how you use your time. You're in charge of how you package your time within those discrete areas. You're also in charge of the kinds of effort that you make and put into things. You're also in charge of your own habits. And inside of those habits, I would include your boundaries. So on a neurological level, we have the ability to rewire ourselves so that we embrace good habits and reject bad ones. On an emotional level, we have the ability to limit our exposure to negative influences. Negative influences, at its most benign level perhaps, is just the media and just the bad news and constant onslaught of negativity. I'd like to appeal to you not to be like the vast majority of people who will watch and move on. I'd like to ask you to vote with your finger, click on subscribe, and then you can receive updates, new technologies, and new ways to make your life work. Subscribe to Lee Clark Academy today, and let's do this thing. If you know people that you're reluctant to discuss your ambitions and your plans and your ideas with for fear of being ridiculed, that's a fair indicator that you should limit your exposure to those people. And it's a fair indication that you should set boundaries for yourself around how much time and effort you put into those people. And of course, this can include people who are very, very close to you. And so, use your common sense. I don't want somebody putting in the comments that they divorced their partner on the basis of a 20-minute YouTube video. Are we clear? Remember, you can't predict the world, but you can predict you. Now I'm going to add a little caveat to that, because even the most stoic of us sometimes find ourselves in situations where certain triggers occur. So let's have a little bit of a wriggle room, shall we? This is not to reject the stoic ideal. What I'm saying is that sometimes shit happens, and sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you may lose the plot, or you may second guess yourself, or you may find yourself concerned, shall we say. I want you to understand that this is all part of the package. This is all part of what it is to be a human with a range of emotional responses. If you lapse, it does not mean you've blown it totally. In the same way that if a toddler falls over, they get up and walk again. If a child falls off a bike, they get back on their bike. So think like a toddler, think like a child. You are a journey. You are a river. You are a work in progress. So there's no drawing lines here. There's no absolutes. There's no stark ideological doctrine being promoted, not on this channel. I know you're human, and I hope you understand that I too am human, and we all have our moments. So that being said, let's get into the next part of the conversation. The next part of the conversation is about how to remove obstacles. What we need to be able to do is to devise a practical application that is going to enable us to remedy the busy work. We've already identified the problem, and we've already accepted that busy work is often a form of disguised avoidance or procrastination. So what we need to do is to find a technology which is going to assist us to get out of it. What I'm proposing here is that we use time buckets. I just made that up, but I think it's useful. Time buckets are three basic frames, or three basic collective ideas that you can drop some other concepts into. I apologise for being clumsy here, but let's just cut to the chase. One of the buckets is how you orient yourself. So we have orientation. The second bucket is how we act or execute our plans. So you have execution. And the third bucket is called protection or preservation. So I'm going to leave those terms with you for a second. We'll come back to them. Second curve thinking, as we've already implied, is about using what you have so that you can adapt and improve going forward. So instead of over-investing in what is not working for you, you can extricate yourself from this, and you can take the best of what you've learned and the best of what you can apply and get yourself into a better place. Second curve thinking is using what you have in order to adapt and improve your life. Let's look at the elements that we can employ in order to get our second curve strategy intact. And we've also looked at how we need to make certain changes. We need to reorient ourselves, we need to redeploy ourselves, and we need to preserve and protect what is good. What I'd like to do is to work through this handout and to describe some of the elements to you. First of all, reorientation. We can reorient our attention, what we decide to put our efforts into. We can reorient the choices that we make, good or bad, and we can reorient the framing, i.e. the narrative and the stories that we tell ourselves. We can also reorient how we learn from the processes and the mistakes and the good stuff. I find that using the 5 W's, who, what, where, why, when, and how, are very useful tools of inquiry in order to frame the kinds of questions we ask of ourselves and of the world. I would like to add that if you ask a positive question, you're going to get a positive answer. And if you ask a negative question, obviously a negative answer will emerge. So if you ask questions like, how will I feel when this succeeds? What will it look like when I achieve this? These are the kinds of questions which are going to assist you to reframe your narrative and to encourage you to make the right choices, and also to put your attention into the right things. The next thing we need to do is to acknowledge that we have misused time and we need to redeploy how we use time. I've discussed the 30-minute friction, timetabling, calendarizing, making sure that your time, including your leisure time, is accounted for. Time is one of the, if not the most precious resource we have. You can make more money, you can make more friends, you can even make more babies for much of your life. You can't make more time. So value time and deploy it effectively. Effort. One of the Stoic notions is that we can control certain things, and we can control the amount of effort that we apply into our endeavours in the same way as we can control the amount of effort we don't apply. So get on top of the amount of effort that you want to put in. And then finally, on the redeployment area, we have habits. The brain creates dopamine because dopamine is an anticipation drug, not a reward drug as people often think. The anticipation of reward is what stimulates dopamine. And the anticipation of reward is what stimulates the habits that we engage in. So what we need to do is we need to replace the negative habits with positive ones. And we can do this by integrating rewards into the things we do. Learn to give yourself that dopamine hit by rewarding yourself by positive outcomes that you achieve, as opposed to getting that kind of sluggish reward, shall we say, from the negative things. Finally, we're looking to preserve and protect our own boundaries. The boundaries that we place around the people that we meet, the environments we exist in, and the situations that we find ourselves in. If we can take control, it means that we can now integrate with people who operate with higher expectations, higher IQs, higher moral standards, higher career standards. If you can set boundaries around yourself, which mean you reject people who are going to drag you down to their level, and you start to integrate with people who can raise you up to theirs, this is going to be a major, major influence on your own success and your own personal development. Well, thank you for watching so far, fellow seeker. I'm just going to sign out. This is a precautionary sign out because Clipchamp, as is often the case, has been dicking me around while I've been filming. So just to make sure that I do get to say goodbye to you properly, I'm going to say thank you, fellow seeker, for paying attention to my ramblings this far, and leave you with one final thought, which is, whatever you dare to do or dream, begin it now.